Hello and welcome to Northwest Newsweek. The corrections officer who was taken hostage and assaulted by 4 prisoners at the Kenora jail earlier this month has issued a public statement about his ordeal and his recovery. John Santoris was surrounded by the inmates and handcuffed to a bed. After about 2 hours, corrections officials managed to secure his release. He was taken to hospital for assessment and is now recovering at home. He issued a statement this week on social media thanking his wife, his family, friends and colleagues, and the community for the support he's received. Santoris said, quote, "I went to work just like every other day. The events that unfolded were horrific and brought upon unimaginable grief and terror to so many people. I want everyone to know that I have slowly started the healing process and begun reaching out for help. I'm struggling at times, but I will be relentless with my recovery efforts." The union president at the Thunder Bay Correctional Center, Sean Bradshaw, says the incident has hit everyone in corrections hard. He's calling for changes as the incident occurred just 3 years after a riot and hostage taking at the Thunder Bay jail.
I think it highlights some of the major issues that are facing corrections right now. Currently the jail is, I believe, running around 125% capacity, so they're over capacity. Kenora jail is running nearly 200% capacity, and it becomes a powder keg. So got a lot of guys sitting on long-term remands, and we can't relieve those pressures. So it becomes very dangerous.
A GoFundMe page that was launched for the married father of 2 young girls has already raised more than $15,000. A single vehicle collision has claimed the life of a Manitouwadge woman. The incident took place around midnight Friday morning when an eastbound vehicle rolled over west of the Little Pick Bridge. 34-year-old Jessica Martin of Manitouwadge was pronounced dead at the scene. The OPP's Highway Safety Division and traffic collision investigators are assisting with the case. It's the news Red Rock has spent years waiting for. Word that a new industry is coming to town. Residents gathered at the Royal Canadian Legion Wednesday to hear from a representative from Certarus. The company specializes in compressing and transporting natural gas to be used in large industrial power plants. Adam Riley reports.
In 2006, the inhabitants of Red Rock awoke to hear the town's main employer, the Narampak Mill, had been shuttered, leaving the community without an industrial tax base. However, on Wednesday, residents learned of a new facility aimed at bringing back industry to the beleaguered hamlet in the form of a compressed natural gas plant. It would tap into the gas line, compress the gas, and transport it to an industrial user. Mayor Gary Nelson says 2 months ago he was hesitant to believe the facility would ever become a reality.
I'll believe it when I see it. We've had so many different companies come to Red Rock on paper or whatever, and it hasn't happened. So when this fella come to Red Rock here now to show us on the slides what they want to do, I am quite impressed, and I think the people of Red Rock will be too.
Nelson says the plant will be located along Cantley Drive near the old Red Rock turnoff, which was a planned site for a Cardlock gas station. Stéphane Gallant is the business development manager in Ontario for Certarus. The company is expanding its operations into Ontario with 2 locations, one in Timmins, which is currently under construction, and one in Red Rock. However, for Red Rock, there is a catch.
The one in Red Rock will go. We just don't know exactly the time frame. So we need to get clients on board or interested enough for us to build. It's a bit of a chicken and egg thing. It's hard to get clients without a plant, but it's hard to build a plant when you have no revenue coming in. The earliest would be spring, summer 2019 if things materialize. So
the company has met with nearby AV Terrace Bay, and in an interview with TBT News last summer, officials with Greenstone Gold expressed interest in utilizing a natural gas power plant for its operations. By the numbers, the company is investing $56 million into Northern Ontario over the next 24 months, creating 30-plus jobs and providing $5 million in salary and benefits. However, Red Rock's fire chief, Ryan Petrie, has a few concerns, especially for his 21-member volunteer fire team.
There's going to be some massive training that we're going to have to do, and the company is going to have to help us out with some equipment purchases and stuff to provide emergency services and safety to our community and also to their business.
Adam Riley, TBT News.
Ontario opposition leader Andrea Horwath visited Thunder Bay Friday. She was here to tour the Regional Health Sciences Centre and discuss health spending, but she also took the opportunity to chime in on the provincial deficit. She believes the government has overinflated the shortfall in order to claim later that the PCs have reduced it. Alana Pickrell reports.
The province's looming deficits was casting a shadow over this news conference by NDP leader Andrea Horwath. She says although families worry about the deficit, their biggest concern is a government that doesn't use public money for the right reasons.
Well, what Mr. Fedeli and Mr. Ford are doing, unfortunately, is setting up the people of Ontario for an excuse to make massive cuts to the things like healthcare and education, and that's a big, big worry. That's all they're doing, and what they should be doing is realizing that the deficit numbers that they're talking about should stop them in their tracks from giving away huge tax cuts to the richest Ontarians and the most wealthy corporations in our province. Those folks should be paying their fair share, and those companies should be paying their fair share to provide the kinds of resources that we need for hospitals like this.
Horwath was originally in Thunder Bay to discuss the overcrowding at the hospital, which she says unfortunately will continue. The Regional Health Sciences Centre routinely operates above capacity, with hospital staff struggling to keep up. And Horwath claims Premier Doug Ford is introducing healthcare cuts that are going to make things go from bad to worse.
It's patients that pay the price with longer and longer waits, only to be treated in stretchers in overcrowded hallways instead of proper hospital rooms. And that, of course, means lack of equipment for folks to access, like even a call bell for a nurse, complete lack of privacy, lack of dignity, lack of quiet space to recover, particularly with mental health patients. That's extremely important. And so what we know for sure is that cuts are only going to take this hospital and the rest of the province from bad to worse.
Horwath says the government can stop the layoffs of healthcare workers, stop the healthcare cuts, and make the necessary investments to end hallway medicine in Ontario. Alana Pickrell, TBT News.
After weeks of rancor at Queen's Park over decisions made by the Ford government, there was a rare moment of quiet solidarity this week between MPPs on both sides of the aisle. MPPs observed a moment of silence in the legislature at the request of Kiiwetinoong MPP Saul Mamakwa. It was to pay respect to a 13-year-old child who took their own life the previous day in Bearskin Lake. Just the latest youth suicide as part of an epidemic which has shined a spotlight on youth mental health in remote northern communities.
This concern is well-founded. And in 2015, a 10-year-old girl took her life. This is also in Bearskin Lake. What is the Premier prepared to do to ensure these pandemics of our young Indigenous people killing themselves stops once and for all?
I know that in many Indigenous communities there are no adequate supports for young people for physical or mental health, and mental health is health. And that is something that we're going to seriously address as we are filing and completing our system of mental health and addictions.
Mamakwa persisted, noting in 2016 the suicide rate among children under the age of 15 in the communities he represents was 50 times higher than the national average. He called it a mental health, intergovernmental, and housing crisis that prompted the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services to issue a response.
When someone loses their life by suicide, they make that decision. It rocks an entire community, and I can understand just standing here with you how emotional this is. I'd like to speak with you after question period so that we can make sure that we have a plan in place that fully supports you and helps your community get through this. Thank you very much.
With a potential Canada Post mail disruption looming, the District Social Services Board has implemented a special procedure to ensure clients receive their payments. Recipients of Ontario Works, as well as tenants and landlords, will have to pick up their October checks at local DSAB offices, regardless of whether a postal strike occurs. In Thunder Bay, social assistance checks will only be available by pickup on September 27th and 28th between 1 and 6 p.m. at the main office on May Street. DSAB Supervisor Brooke Latimer says they're trying to make an unfortunate situation as easy as possible. Clients in the region won't have to travel into the city to receive their assistance.
We do intend to make it as seamless as possible for our clients. We want to, of course, have continuity of service for them. Manitowage, Scriber, Terrace Bay, Nipigon, those all have offices. So those recipients can call those offices, and most of the pickup will happen between the normal working hours of those offices, but special arrangements can be made by calling the office.
Latimer also notes anyone who receives their check by way of direct deposit doesn't have to come to the main office, as their money will be deposited as usual. Communities across the Northwest are constantly looking at ways to build their economy. Federal government funding is crucial to that effort, but many towns and cities feel the needed funds aren't coming quickly enough. On Wednesday, area municipal leaders met with FedNor officials to express their concern. Ben Nesbitt has more.
Community leaders from across the region were on hand as the Northwestern Ontario Municipal Association hosted FedNor officials. The meeting allowed mayors and councillors to express concerns, as well as brainstorm ideas about how their communities can grow as a whole and not just individually. NOMA President Wendy Landry thinks Northern Ontario's uniqueness needs to be marketed.
We need to have a process that is streamlined so that it's Northerners making decisions for Northern people. And at the same time that we have, projects that are going forward that has a process that we can see it happen much quicker. We have to market our region and come up with ideas that makes us different and stand apart from the rest of the country.
One of the main topics of the workshop was immigration and community readiness. Some of the barriers discussed were a lack of employment opportunities and a general lack of knowledge of what northern communities have to offer. However, the overall consensus in the room was that the biggest issue in the past has been the notion of us and them. However, that's a gap the executive director of the Thunder Bay Multicultural Association, Kathy Woodbeck, feels is drastically closing.
The us and them piece and the worry about newcomers coming into communities and this idea of taking jobs, and now we're looking at we need workers, how do we welcome them? And I'm so glad to hear communities having that conversation now and talking about we want to welcome people, we want them to feel like part of our community, we want them to get involved in the recreational activities, we want to know how we can create a mentorship or a connecting in our community process.
Ben Nesbitt, TBT News.
Well, after the break, Supercom Industries, the First Nations-led company that wants to build NextBridge's proposed east-west tie power line from Thunder Bay to Wawa, is still waiting for the province to approve the project. The company that's training Indigenous workers to construct a huge transmission line along the North Shore continues to cope with delays in its construction. The Ontario Energy Board could take another 6 months to decide who will build the power line between Thunder Bay and Wawa, and that's forced Supercom to find other short-term jobs for the 200 graduates of its training program. Jonathan Wilson reports.
For the past year, Supercom Industries has been cranking out graduates 20 at a time from their energy-related training programs. Red Rock Indian Band Chief Matt Dupuis, who also serves as director of Supercom, says they're now up to their goal of around 200 grads. They come from 45 communities around the region, and they're now ready to help build the east-west tie transmission line. But the project won't start when it was originally planned.
That was to start in November. That's looking quite bleak at this moment. I mean, the hearings being in October, and then after the hearings, the OEB, I believe, has 120 days to make a decision. So we're looking at possibility of a spring start of next year.
NextBridge and Hydro One have both submitted bids to construct the 400-kilometre transmission line. The Ontario Energy Board is holding a combined hearing in Toronto next month, with written comments being accepted until November 7th. Meanwhile, Supercom has been working with other employers to secure jobs for their trainees.
Our staff has now been starting to work with even different industries, forestry, mining, things like that, because there's such a cry for a skilled workforce in northwestern Ontario.
The $700 million transmission project will require hundreds of skilled workers. Dupuis says they hope the OEB will speed up its decision before many of their trainees move on to other careers.
We want to see a decision be made. We want to see it be made soon. We can't sit idle, because we had a lot of people that made a major change in their life and signed on and believed in what we were doing, and our job is to stay true to that.
Supercom has been working directly with NextBridge, the original bidder for the project. Dupuis says Supercom officials will speak at the OEB hearing in support of NextBridge, but on behalf of their Indigenous grads, they also have to prepare for the alternative.
If Hydro One were to win it, I mean, we'll make sure that there's a plan in place so that there is that transition there. I mean, no matter who wins it, to build this project is going to take a lot of people, and where better else to get it than from local.
Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.
After spending almost 3 decades in municipal politics, Kenora Mayor Dave Canfield has decided to call it a career. Canfield was first elected as a councillor in the former township of Jaffrey Mellick in 1991, where he was later elected mayor. He then became the first mayor of the city of Kenora when the township, along with the towns of Keewatin and Kenora, amalgamated in 2000. During his time as mayor, he helped push for improvements to the Kenora Rowing Club, turning it into a recognized world-class facility. He oversaw a focus on downtown revitalization and the growth of the tourism industry after the collapse of the forestry sector nearly 10 years ago. In addition to his role as mayor and councillor, Canfield spent 4 years as president of the Northwestern Ontario Municipal Association, where he worked to help the forestry sector recover. Canfield calls his time quite the roller coaster ride and a lot of fun. He says he'll miss the job, but he's optimistic about the future, and he hasn't closed the door yet.
You realize that you're walking away from this and you go, wow, can I really walk away from it? Because you've got so much, and there's so many good things coming, and you really want to be part of them. But I think the reality is that, yeah, whoever moves in is going to follow, continue on with the work that's being done, and that's the positive side. Maybe in 4 years from now, I'll decide I want to come back. I don't know. At this point in time, though, it's time to take a break.
Canfield also credits many of his successes to hardworking volunteers, as well as fellow mayors and councillors, administrations, and organizations across the region. In less than a month, voters across Ontario will head to the polls to select municipal leaders. Thanks to Canfield's retirement, residents in Kenora are guaranteed to have a new mayor. 2 people are vying for the top spot on Kenora City Council. Current councillor Dan Renyard was elected in 2014. He says he's most proud of the partnerships the city has entered into during that time. He hopes to tackle housing issues in the city if he's elected as mayor on October 22nd.
The city needs to be, we don't necessarily have to drive every project comes along, but we need to be partners with those. So in the housing initiative, if we can partner up and help provide infrastructure in terms of sewer, water, those type of projects, that'll enhance the, investors want to build in our community, so that'll be strong.
TBT News did make several attempts to contact Lydia Harlos, who's running opposite Renyard, but we've received no response. The chief of the Anishinaabe Police Service has officially called it a career. Friday was Terry Armstrong's last day on the job after 34 years in First Nations policing. Over his 5 years as NAP's chief, the size of the police force has grown from 145 to 162 active officers, and the service has managed to secure enough government funding to add 79 more over the next 5 years. As far as his most memorable moments, Armstrong says overseeing the largest drug bust in NAP's history is high on the list. As he said his goodbyes, he called it an honor to have served the people of the Anishinaabe Nation.
And the many people up north that supported us and the friends and relationships that I've made, I'm going to miss that. And traveling into the communities and the welcome you get, and I'm going to miss a lot of that. So, but like I say, you just at some point you've got to say that it's time to let somebody else do the job and turn over the reins, so to speak.
Armstrong says he's pleased to know he's set up NAPS for continued growth under the direction of its next chief. Roland Morrison will serve as acting chief for the next year. Coming up next, Nipigon has made big changes to its economy since losing its mill, and the new direction has led to an economic boom. The town of Nipigon has experienced a tourism-related economic boom this summer. Visitors from all over North America have made Nipigon their destination location. Jonathan Wilson reports.
I've seen license plates from Texas, from Minnesota, Wisconsin.
Suzanne Kuko is Nipigon's Economic Development Officer. She says everyone in the town has been noticing an increase in out-of-town visitors this summer from across the U.S. and Canada. Some have been there for fishing excursions, while others have spent more than just a day in and around Nipigon exploring the sites.
Why I think that we're seeing them here in Nipigon is because we have so much here for people to see and do that they're not expecting. It's kind of sort of a gem that they're unearthing, if you will. So we have our Paddle to the Sea Park If they have a family with them, we have a splash pad here, which they can, cool off at, just have a lunch break and cool off. We also have the bridge, of course, that's going to be finished soon. People love to see that. And we have our tower, our lookout tower that was just completed this summer.
Cuckoo admits most of what she's hearing is anecdotal, as there's no reliable way to tell how many people are stopping when they pass through the Nipigon area or for how long they stop. But she says the increase has been verified in one unique way.
It's hard to get real hard data on how many visitors we have, but we do have numbers coming in from the Tourist Information Center, and they actually run numbers on how many people are just using the bathroom and how many people are actually coming in and asking for information on the area. And the percentage of those asking for information is going up. The bathroom use is kind of going down a little bit, so that's really good news.
Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.
The township of Red Rock wants to develop an RV park along its waterfront near Pullolog Park. That topic was discussed at a recent Red Rock Council meeting. A couple of options were presented, but town officials say the preferred option at this point is for 29 lots, which would supply water and electricity to all types of recreational vehicles. Plan B would be to see twice as many RV spots squeezed into the same property at the marina. Once a feasibility study is complete, Council plans to go back to residents for input on which option they'd prefer. Council will then go after government funding. So far, there's no price tag attached to the effort. Well, that'll do it for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.